You are about to listen to a Jason Burgos exclusive interview. I appreciate the time. It's an honor. I admire the work you've done in the sport. I was looking forward to it. I try to, make sure and develop my questions to give you a lot of different angles. I want to talk, of course, about the stuff from a new era, but also I have some questions, general MMA questions for you towards the end. But the first question is, now this event certainly seemed a new era, like the biggest in promotion's history, and gained much more notice here in the States than previous events. What makes you feel this is the dawn of a new era for one? And do you think it truly could rival the UFC sooner than later?
I think it really was dubbed New Era, and it was New Era, because I think any time that you do your first show in Japan, and if that show is a resounding success, as this one was, from an audience point of view, from a television point of view, and especially from a fight point of view, with all the fights that happened, and being such an entertaining card, overall was such a success. But any time you break into Japan and you do that successfully, and you overcome the mental logistics and boundaries that Japan can present, it represents a new era for any company. So when you do a show in Japan, it's almost, I feel, like getting one of those blue verification ticks on Twitter. It does something for your credibility. It sort of verifies you amongst the martial arts world. You've broken that spiritual home of martial arts being Japan. And I think the fact that we did that with such an emphatic show, where every fight on the card was entertaining and had the crowd enthralled and had a usually quiet Japanese crowd out of their seats and very loud, did certainly signal a new era for one championship and a new era for martial arts. Are we going to go with the UFC one day? You know what, to be honest with you, I don't think, as long as I've been working here at One Championship, that's 2 years now, almost, I've never, ever, ever heard any company policy, anyone say, we're targeting the UFC. It's just not on the radar of One Championship. That's the thing the media bring up. A lot of fans bring up, a lot of media bring up, well, One Championship's coming after UFC, and one's trying to become as big as UFC, and one may overtake UFC one day. But it's never been what I consider the strategy of the company. The strategy is chasing viewership figures of NFL standard, of NFL proportion, of 100 million. At the moment we're averaging, I think, about between 20 and 30. We peak at 35. We're waiting for the total figures to come back from a new era in Japan, which may be anywhere between 40 and 50. So we're one of the most viewed sports events on the planet overall, and that's what we're chasing. We're chasing NFL-style numbers, which is 100 million viewers. I don't see us chasing UFC. It's not in our game plan.
Now, I'm glad you mentioned the Japan part of it, because that transitions perfectly into my next question. A major story from the event was the return of Aoki to Japan for MMA and regaining the lightweight title, having called many events in Japan. We all know how big of a deal someone like Sakuraba is there. Do you feel Aoki is on that same level in Japanese MMA and is a legend of Japanese MMA and honestly a legend of general MMA?
Well, there's no doubt that Aoki is a legend of general MMA. His accomplishments over the years and having such longevity, and not only his accomplishments, but the way he achieved all those things in spectacular fashion over the years. Some of the most inventive submissions we've seen, goggle platters and the arm bars and the chokes and breaking Hirot's arm at Dynamite, and, now slipping Edward Folayang in one round, which very few people expected him to do, means that he is qualified as a legend in the whole world of mixed martial arts. Yes, a big legend in Japan. Yes, a major star in Japan. Do I think he's as big as Sakuraba in Japan? Well, look, at the moment, Sakuraba is way past his prime years. Sakuraba is no longer competing in mixed martial arts. So at the moment, the name Aoki is a bigger name in mixed martial arts in Japan than Sakuraba is at the moment. Sakuraba, during his peak, though, was a whole different breed of animal, because you're talking about Sakuraba, who was at the peak of Pride. Pride was at its peak, and Pride was the be-all and end-all of Japanese mixed martial arts. But at the moment, right now, sure, Aoki is the biggest guy in Japan, and that was evident by all the media that surrounded him throughout the entire lead up to a new era. There was so much focus on him, and he took it all in his stride and his character. And he had a really good approach. His approach to the game has changed. It's become a lot more philosophical. It's sort of a return to the Aoki of old, who was tapping people out in highlight reel fashion 9, 10, 11 years ago at Dynamite and at Dream. And I think the Japanese are loving seeing this resurgence of the old school, nasty, relentless, aggressive Aoki who's flying their Japanese flag and, tapping out someone like Flyang, who a lot of people had as their favorite, sleeping, really quickly.
Mm-hmm. Now, I mean, one of the another major story going to an event was, of course, the debut of the big signing and trade from the UFC in terms of Demetrius Johnson and Eddie Alvarez. What were your thoughts on Eddie Alvarez's loss and even Demetrius Johnson having some difficulties early in their fights? I mean, does it speak to the talent level of one? I mean, does it show the major differences in the weight classes from Asia to North America, or is it kind of a little bit of both?
I guess it's kind of a little bit of both, but I think it speaks more to the talent that we have here at One Championship. I mean, unless you don't know about the talent that One Championship has, you make comments like, Eddie's going to run through the lightweight division, Demetrius is going to flyweight division. They'll easily go over there and conquer. Well, anyone that actually watches One Championship on a regular basis and those who are familiar with it, know that was never going to be the case. I mean, when I heard that they put Eddie against Timothy Nastukin, I was like, wow, they've thrown Eddie into the deepest of deep ends. It's a baptism of fire. That's no pushover fight. I said to everyone, don't sleep on Nastukin. Nastukin's an animal. Nastukin's a beast. We've seen Nastukin destroy people in the One Championship circle. And, Eddie didn't underestimate him. Eddie came in well prepared. He came in with a fantastic camp, full of confidence, with a game plan. But that old saying, the game plan goes out the window once you get hit in the face, or in this case, once you get hit in the eyelid. And Nastukin steamrolled him. And anyone who's watched Nastukin and seen him rise through One Championship knew that he was not going to be easy picking through Alvarez.
Now, one of the key faces of the company is Angela Lee. I mean, she's a talented young fighter, undefeated. Now, she lost her first fight after a 4-year unbeaten run. I mean, she's only 22 and has only known success. How does she bounce back from a tough loss like this? And do you feel that she has that inner character to bounce back it easily? And does the fact that it happened at a higher weight class and not her own maybe make bouncing back and recovering from such a difficult loss easier?
Angela Lee, I think she'll bounce back very well from this loss. Angela Lee is a very well put together young lady, very well put together mentally and emotionally, well beyond her years, very very high maturity in her mentality. And when you look at her posts on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, following the loss, you can see how she is dealing with it, how she has already dealt with it, how she knows she lost to a superior opponent. She pays respects to Zhong Jinnan and Zhong Jin's game plan, and says, it's fueling the fire for her. She'll bounce back. And I think anyone who has a loss in their career needs to learn from a loss and address it and come back from that. And Angela has the capacity to do that, to be able to address it, to learn from it, to come back stronger than ever. I've got a feeling that she may meet Zhong Jinnan again in the future at atomweight. I think Zhong Jinnan may drop down. I heard some whispers about that, to challenge Angela for her atomweight world title. So that's something that could be on the cards in the future. It's unofficial, of course, but it's just whispers I'm hearing out of Bali MMA that could happen. Angela's unbeaten at atomweight. She cleaned out the division at atomweight. Whether she comes back at atom or she goes for another run at strawweight, I don't know. But for a lot of people, it was a shock that Angela lost. But then again, for a lot of us, it wasn't. I mean, Zhong Jinnan's a superb champion. She's been an absolute wrecking ball. And in this match, we saw her stick to this brilliant game plan that came apparent in the second round. We could just see she wasn't stepping on the gas early. She wasn't pulling the trigger early. She was, moving around and allowing Angela to come at her and score points on her and outstrike her. But you could tell that the game plan was to draw Angela to deep water, get her to the 4th or 5th round and see if she'll gas out. And, that's what happened. And, credit to Zhong Jinnan and credit to Angela for having the balls to step up in weight and go after the champion in her first fight at a higher weight class, and beating Zhong Jinnan for the entirety until Zhong Jinnan defeated her. Angela was winning, and Angela almost subbed her out. So Angela Lee's a young phenom, and she'll bounce right back from it.
Now, in my recent conversation with Chatri Sityodtong, he mentioned the organization could come to the U.S. next year, possibly even Madison Square Garden, which as a New Yorker, I was very excited about. Now, first, how big would it be for you to call an event there? And second, do you feel it is important for one to grow in North America, or not as much as some might think?
personally, to call a match at Madison Square Garden, I think for any sports commentator would be a dream come true. For me personally, MSG has always been, I related to professional wrestling. It's no secret that my commentary career was inspired by professional wrestling, especially after watching WrestleMania #1 in 1985 as a 9-year-old. That was broadcast from Madison Square Garden, and commentating that was my hero, Gorilla Monsoon. So for me, Madison Square Garden represents, almost like a summit of Everest. To do a show at the venue that my career was inspired from. On a personal note, for one championship going there, going to the US, I know that has been discussed. And Madison Square Garden, New York, has been the venue that has been bandied about as maybe a future venue. How important do I feel? And I'm only speaking from personal opinion. I'm not speaking from a company opinion. But the US market is big for people in the US, but you've got to understand that outside of the US, there's a whole huge world, especially in Asia, some 4.4 billion people, which is a lot more people in a region than some, 350, 400 million in the US. Yep. Don't quote me on that, but whatever the US population is. So there's a much bigger world to conquer in Asia, where most of our television contracts are, and when we're selling out every venue, like the Mall of Asia tonight, we'll sell at the Mall of Asia Arena tonight, we'll sell at Singapore Indoor Stadium, we'll sell at the Impact Stadium in Bangkok, the Tawana Indoor Stadium in Yangon, Myanmar, the Astora Stadium in Jakarta. We sell out all these venues wherever we go, and we sell them out easily. And we have major TV deals with all big broadcasters around Asia, including China, which is a massive one to break. And we just signed up with 2 of the biggest broadcasters in India. So that's another potential, 1 billion eyes potentially could be on the product there in India. I mean, these are major, major markets that are much, much bigger than the US. The US would be nice, I think, because you think mixed martial arts, you think the USA, because that's really where it started with the UFC in 1993. Would it be nice for one to do it? Sure, it'd be nice to have an imprint on the US and say that it was done, and maybe do a show there, once a year or something would be cool. I guess like K1 used to do back in the day. K1 used to have a couple of shows in the US back in the day, but it was never part of their big core market, never part of their target market. Their target market was always, Asia, with a particular importance placed on Japan, and also their target market was Europe, because Europe, kickboxing was so big. So I think it's the same with one championship. I don't think there's any overwhelming drive and desire and, oh my God, we must conquer America, because I think it's more so, let's do what we can do in America and try and conquer it and get the television viewerships up on TNT and the live views on BR Live, etc. And let's maybe do a stadium show there in the future. And so we've done it and have a footprint in America. But, the focus for us is just to continue to utterly and totally dominate and conquer the 4.4 billion people in Asia, and especially those big Asian markets like Japan, like China, like India. That's just where we're gonna focus on.
Now, aside from his martial arts background, which a lot of fighters like about Chatri Sityodtong, I mean, the thing in North America following A New Era was, hyperbole and big boasts and those kind of things. And I mean, as a person, as a fan of the sport, I get it. Promotion is key. You have to make people understand, how big it is, how important it is. But I mean, Chatri Sityodtong personally. I mean, I've interviewed him twice. He seems like a great guy. I really like him. What makes him unique as a promotional boss to work for compared to some of the previous people you've worked for over a very distinguished and long career?
What makes him unique, I think, the thing that sets Chatri apart is really his passion. I mean, you won't find a man who is more passionate about his product, about his company, about the people he employs, and the people he works with, pardon me, Jason, than Chatri. You talk to him about anything to do with one championship, anything to do with martial arts, really, and you can see the fire lit in his eyes, and he'll talk your ear off about martial arts, and he's got his finger on the pulse with martial arts. I mean, even yesterday, I passed him at the Nobu Hotel in Manila, and we had a brief chat, and he was in shorts and a t-shirt on his way to do sparring for like 8 rounds with a world champion like Alex Silva, you know, and with other Muay Thai champions. And the guy used to be a Muay Thai fighter, you know, and he still spars every week with Muay Thai champions and BJJ champions he rolls with at Evolve MMA in Singapore. And when he's on the road, he's doing that. So he knows what the fighters need, what makes a fighter's mind tick, what they like, how they need to be treated, how they need to be looked after. But also, he knows the ins and outs of the rest of the company. He knows how the TV side of it works and what is required for the television side and the production side and what's required for the management side and what's required for, the traveling crew of one championship. When we go on the road, it's massive. You know, we got about 60 to 80 people that are traveling on the road with us every single show that we're flying around from all parts of the world as part of the, you know, cogs in a giant wheel that's going to be greased perfectly to function optimally. So Chatri knows the inside outs of every bit of the company, but most of all is his passion for martial arts. And I think that's what people get off on the most and really like about him, is that he's so passionate about the product, and his vision is, he's very ambitious. You know, saying we're chasing viewership figures of 100 million. You know, we want to rival the NFL for worldwide viewership. Saying we want to do Madison Square Garden one day. Saying one day, in Japan we'll be as big as Pride used to be, and we'll do Saitama Super Arena, we'll do Tokyo Dome, etc. And launching something like the One Super Series and saying that it's going to rival what K1 did and get even bigger one day. You know, and so he's got very grand plans. They're very ambitious, but they're believable because already he's done so much more than what a lot of people thought in a very short amount of time. And you can see that in the next 3 or 4 years, he's got his head down and his foot to the wheel, and he's just pushing forward. And that passion, devotion carries him through everything.
Now, I mean, I wanted to ask you some topics off of one championship and just the general sport of MMA, because you've been around it so long. You've covered it all over the world, different promotions. Now, what are your thoughts on the positive drug tests of TJ Dillashaw, a fighter who was viewed as one of the true elites in this sport? I mean, with positive tests for John Jones, Ruslan Magomedov, Anderson Silva, Brock Lesnar. I mean, I even talked about it on the podcast earlier. I mean, Chael Sonnen, Vitor Belfort, Melendez, Mirko Cro Cop, John Fitch, all have been tested positive in the last decade or so. I mean, you know, are you worried as a part of the sport, as a journalist, broadcaster, and even as a fan, are you worried the sport is close to a point where this stuff becomes very damaging for it?
Yeah, you know, with Dillashaw, it's disappointing. And I think with any of these guys, the main thing, from my opinion, is just it's disappointing. You know, these are guys that people look up to and people put on a pedestal, and they pay money to watch, and then to have the disappointment of someone, you know, testing positive for PEDs is just, it's deflating as a fan. And that's the way I look at it, is as a fan. You know, I don't want to see my guys that I grew up idolizing and not idolizing, take that out. I grew up watching and was very passionate to watch and follow. I don't want to see them, you know, being popped for positive drug use, because it's just deflating. It's like, well, you know, an aura of invincibility you thought was because of someone's martial arts skills and their training and their mental aptitude is partially down to, you know, them taking a performance-enhancing drug to get an unfair advantage over an opponent. So, you know, with Dillashaw and with all those names you mentioned, I think it's just disappointing. Of course it hurts the sport. You know, it hurts any sport. It's not just mixed martial arts, it's any sport. And drugs are rampant in a lot of sports. And there's a lot of drug taking and PED taking going on that we don't hear about, that isn't reported, or, you know, isn't even tested for, but you just know it's happening in so many sports. You know, and not even PEDs, but also recreational drugs. And some hardcore recreational drugs that are happening that you don't hear about in various sports. You know, so it's not only mixed martial arts. But because mixed martial arts is an individual sport, it's one man against another, one man testing his mettle against another man, there's going to be so much focus on it when one of those two men is tested positive for a drug that enhances his performance against the other. You know, because the sport relies on me being stronger, more powerful, and having a better game plan than you. Okay, and it relies on mano a mano, man on man. It's pure, it's primitive, it's visceral. You can't get any more pure than that. So when that purity is interrupted, when that purity becomes impure because one of us has taken a performance-enhancing drug to give us an unfair advantage, then all of a sudden that pureness is gone, and that's what's disappointing as a fan. That you want to see that pure man on man, who's the better human being because they've got the better skill set and have trained harder, not because they've taken drugs.
Now, for one makes a point of pushing the ideology, even in promotional and just of its fighters having, a moral and ethical code. And some here in the West kind of will snicker at it just because they're used with, fighters with bravado and trash talking. But I mean, away from the positives, the sport has also seen a lot of issues with fighters getting into trouble outside and even inside the cage. We had the Conor McGregor and the phone thing recently. BJ Penn, Matt Hughes, and Tony Ferguson have all had issues with alleged domestic abuse. Even Rachel Ostovich was a victim of it by her fighting ex-husband. Now, Chatri really pushes these codes of ethics and morals with his fighters and the brand itself, and I really appreciate that. How important is something like that in a sport when some of its biggest stars or legends bring very negative attention to it?
It's very important in a sport, and there's a I've been using this difference for years, and it's only popped up a little bit more now because One Championship is pushes so much the martial arts codes of conduct. But you may remember me on the Voice Versus with several of my guests asking them, are a lot of the UFC guys fighters or martial artists? There's a difference between the two. Now, the philosophy and the ideology being promoted by One Championship and what we look for in our athletes is the martial arts values. Now, if you go to any martial arts school, and I've been around martial arts, I started covering martial arts in 1992, so I've probably been covering it longer than anyone else in the world. If you go to any martial arts school, anywhere, and I send my 4-year-old son to Taekwondo. I used to send him to karate, now he does Taekwondo. But you go to any school, whether it's Muay Thai, kickboxing, Taekwondo, karate, Jiu-Jitsu, Capoeira, Kung Fu, Wushu Sanda, whatever it may be, you will not get any instructor anywhere in the world telling these kids, push another kid and call him an F word, call him a C word, throw a chair through a window, punch him in the nose when he's not looking, throw a can full of drink at him from across a room. That's unheard of. What you hear all these teachers, instructors saying is respect other people.
Yeah.
Okay? Don't bully anyone. Use martial arts only if you need to defend yourself, only if your physical condition depends on it. Use martial arts internally to improve yourself as a person, to humble yourself, to build integrity and to build courage and to build those virtues. You never hear any instructor anywhere saying it should be used for anything else. And this is what we're trying to, do here at One Championship, is tell the watching world, this is the true spirit of martial arts. That's why at our press conferences, you won't see guys dressed in hoodies, with earphones on, brooding around the place, their hands stuffed in their pockets, shoulder blocking each other and pushing and shoving each other and, calling each other the F word and the C word and the N word or whatever else they call each other. It just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen because that's not how true martial artists act. That's how fighters may act. Okay, when their testosterone and their adrenaline is pumping and coursing through their veins, that's how they may act. But martial artists don't act that way. And also the difference being as well is that in other organizations, you must sell a pay-per-view model, okay? And a lot of the ways people think you sell a pay-per-view model, and unfortunately, it's true in the US, is to get into the bravado, the push and shove, the name calling, the crazy stunts, throwing things through windows and throwing things at each other and threatening each other on Twitter and this and that. That's how you sell pay-per-views to largely to a Western audience, which is sad. Well, One Championship has no pay-per-view model. Our guys aren't expected to do that. We're broadcast into 140 countries with TV contracts in all these countries, no pay-per-view model. So we're not expecting pushing and shoving, and we wouldn't allow pushing and shoving because we've taken care of that. Don't you martial artists worry about the TV side? We've taken care of it. We've got our contracts in place. All you've got to do is perform your best on the night inside the circle. Do your best at the press conferences and in media appearances to make sure you're exuding those qualities of a martial artist, those qualities you are. And I think speaking to Demetrius Johnson, was something he found very refreshing in his one championship experience so far, is that now he can portray those qualities he's always wanted to as a martial artist that came from him as a martial artist since he was a little boy, a true martial artist quality.
Now, 2 questions left. I really appreciate the time. Now, to me, the sport seems really as strong as ever. You know, UFC is always there, but one is globalizing. Bellator and PFL are doing big things here in the West. Combate Americas, KSW, ASB are notable in certain regions, and they're catering to a certain demographic of MMA fan, you know, the world over. Is this one of the best moments in the sport we have seen so far, and why is competition and a strong business all over the world important for those who may only want the UFC monopoly?
I think we're probably experiencing, I don't know if you call it a golden era. It's getting there, you know. It's getting there. We're experiencing more mixed martial arts now worldwide than we ever had before. So call that whatever era you want. Maybe we're experiencing the global era of mixed martial arts for the first time ever. You know, in the past we've had golden eras. It was the golden era of Pride. Yeah. Okay? Which most people say that was the golden era of mixed martial arts, when Pride was huge, and the earlier UFC days, but especially when Pride was huge, and you had megastars, guys who were demigods, you know, competing and being, you know, being godlike status in Japan and other places around the world. But it wasn't global mixed martial arts. It was very much Japan and the USA and other stuff here and there, but they were the 2 big ones. But now, you know, all those companies you just mentioned, we are seeing the global era of mixed martial arts right now. We're seeing one championship throughout Asia and also expanding their footprint, you know, worldwide. We're still seeing UFC as, you know, the dominant force, particularly in the USA and also in parts of Europe. We're seeing Combatis America doing their thing for the Latin, you know, the Latin crowd. We're seeing PFL doing good things, Bellator doing good things. You know, so there's very much a global feel about mixed martial arts at the moment. And there's a feel that, hey, there's more than just one option. If you don't like UFC, watch one championship. If you don't like one championship, try Bellator. You don't like Bellator, try Combat America. Try you know, PFL, and you know, try Bellator. Try, you know, Hex in Australia. Whatever it may be, there are options for people. And really, in the past, we never had so many options that we did now. You know, even on a local level, on a regional level, the stuff I used to commentate in the US, like CES and LFA, and you know, these guys are putting on fantastic regional shows that are the breeding grounds for guys that go to these mega organizations. So I think I don't want to call it a golden era, because to me and a lot of fans, the golden era was Pride time. But I think we're seeing a global era. Let's call it a global era of mixed martial arts. I
like that. Now, last question, and this is more about yourself. You know, what are some of your passions or interests away from fight sports? You mentioned professional wrestling. Like, you know, who are some of your favorite performers in professional wrestling now? You know, are you big into Netflix binge watching? Will you be seeing Avengers Endgame the weekend comes out, or would we be surprised to know you are maybe an avid stamp or bottle cap collector? I mean, what are some of the passions for you outside and away from combat sports, because your life is consumed with it, because, you know, one does so much?
You know, it might sound a little corny, but my greatest passion is being home with my family, being on the road so much as I am. You know, we're away. Sometimes it's week after week on end, and sometimes it's once every 2 weeks, and making the trips around to Asia from Australia, which is a fairly long trip. It means a lot of time away from my family, and I've got a 4-year-old, a 1-year-old, and a beautiful wife, and I really miss them so much when I'm on the road that when I'm home, I do all that I can to spend time with them. And spending time with them is my favorite thing to do, is to take my 4-year-old to the movies. You know, we'll go to the movies. It's always the kids' movies, but lately I've you know, he likes to watch like Jurassic Park and Avengers and a little bit of older stuff. But taking the movies and getting some popcorn and chilling in a movie is my favorite thing to do with him when I'm home. You know, going to a nice restaurant when we get the kids babysat with the grandparents with my wife is nice when I'm home. You know, so just spending family time is probably my number one passion. I don't really tend to watch a lot of fights and stuff, you know, outside of work, just because I'm doing it so often. It'd be like saying to a person who flips burgers at McDonald's, what do you want for dinner tonight? Do you want to have McDonald's? And probably the last thing I want to eat is McDonald's. Sometimes the last thing I want to do is to watch any more fights, because I see so many of them, you know? So I'm not really a guy that sits in front of the TV and watches fights, or, you know, buys pay-per-views and stuff. It's like I'll catch up on things that interest me, and particularly particular fights that interest me, I'll watch them, but I won't sit there, in my off time glued to a TV watching fights. Another big passion of mine is Freemasonry. I'm a Freemason and have been for 10 years. That's a major passion of mine. It's been an absolutely life-changing experience, and something that I still get to enjoy and love every opportunity I can get to go to a lodge and visit lodges around the world and improve my Freemasonry. And I've got another Masonic book coming out out of my publisher in London in a couple of months' time, and I'm writing a memoir at the moment as well. So writing's a thing I like to do in my spare time, and I'm very passionate about. But my life is very away from it all. When I'm at work, it's very full on and it's heady and it's crazy and it's fun. But away from it, it's very, very simple, and it's mostly a family-focused life.